Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be regarding the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. I'm not going to do too much talking in this intro, so without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so Tulsa was a modernized city with a growing population of more than 100,000 people. Only 10,000 residents were African American, and most of them lived in the Greenwood district, which was a city that was home to 2 newspapers, several churches, a library branch, and many black-owned businesses. But Tulsa was a very troubled town because crime rates were extremely high and the city was plagued by vigilantism. This all started with a man named Dick Rowland, which was an African American shoe shiner, and a white elevator operator, Sarah Page. At this time, it was inside of a hotel elevator, and some people say that they heard her scream, but a lot of the explanations for that was Rowland stepped on Paige's foot when he entered the elevator, which made her scream. But the next day, on the Tulsa Tribune, the city's newspaper, they said that Rowland had attempted to sexually assault Paige. So this was the very beginning of the Tulsa Race Massacre. At the time, there was a lot going around saying that there was an attempted sexual assault to Paige. So by 7:30 p.m., hundreds of whites gathered outside of the Tulsa County Courthouse, demanding that all the authorities hand over Dick Rowland, but the sheriff refused. And around 9 p.m., there was reports of 25 armed African men going down there to offer their services to protect Rowland, but the sheriff turned them down, and all the men returned back to Greenwood, and lots of white people and the white members of the mob were extremely mad and tried to break into the National Guard armory, but were turned away by a handful of the guardsmen. And then around 10 p.m., there was a rumor that hit that said white men were storming the courthouse trying to get Rowland taken out and so-called handling them. So they were turned back, and a group of African American men, around 75 of them in number, went to the courthouse after hearing this rumor, and they offered their services once again, but they were turned down and they had to leave. And as they were leaving, a white man shot one of the black veterans, and then that's when the riot began. Over the next 6 hours, Tulsa faced huge amounts of chaos because angry white men were frustrated over not being able to get Dick Rowland, and they began fighting. Over this time, unarmed African American men were murdered inside a downtown movie theater, and armed whites were beginning to make drive-bys by shooting black residential neighborhoods. And by this time, it was only 6 hours in, and midnight fires had began around the entire African American district in Greenwood, burning all the city African American businesses and the things that were going on in the neighborhood. So during the earlier hours of this conflict, the police didn't really do much to stop the crisis. In fact, the police deputized former members of the lynch mob and instructed them to go get a gun and also attack the African Americans in the neighborhood. And then local units of the National Guard were mobilized, but they spent most of the night protecting the white neighborhood because they feared that the African Americans would counterattack because they attacked their local businesses and people to a point of death. Shortly after, thousands of armed white men had gathered along Greenwood, and when daybreak, they just began to loot African American homes and their businesses, and then after looting them, they set them all on fire. And this began numerous murders and burning businesses and taking away everything that they worked for. And even after some people surrendered to the group of white people, they were murdered. There was even claims that there was a white man carrying around a machine gun and using planes to drop bombs on people's homes and businesses during the attack. The black African American Tulsans fought hard to really protect their homes and businesses, but with the resources that the white people had and the amount of them, they were really outnumbered. And by the time that the National Guard troops arrived in Tulsa to actually help the African Americans on June the 1st, most of Greenwood was already completely torched. And after all of that, Dick Rowland was exonerated from the so-called sexual assault, attempted sexual assault that so-called happened, but no whites were ever sent to prison for the murders or the arson that has occurred during the situation whatsoever. And from this, most of African American population were made homeless in the event. A lot of them spent the winter of 1921 to 1922 living in tents. They were forced to travel to other places and find other ways to live. But despite all of that, the white establishments tried to force the relocation of the black community. But many days after the violence, the black Tulsans had already begun rebuilding Greenwood on their own, but they were still forced to spend a whole winter and a half living in the tents. But over time, they began to rebuild, and that is now known as the Black Wall Street, and the Tulsa Race Massacre occurred there. So this is the end of the video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it and learned something. It would really be appreciated if you guys would like, comment, and subscribe on this video and tell me what you think and what I can do to make it better. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.